Good morning. It's December 5th, 2018. I want to talk about Plato's Republic today and concepts of virtue and what he says about education. But it is December 5th, and this would have been my Uncle Ron's birthday. Ron was 9 years older than me, and he was my uncle, Mom's brother. And he was like a brother to me. And he died a tragic death. Murder was suspected. It was a whole thing and had never really been solved. I mean, we got answers, but they ain't the right ones. So, you live with that. But, if you'd have been here, Uncle Ron, I still remember you. You know what we went through, man. All the way. Good fun, bro. Good fun, man. Anyway, nonetheless, Plato's Republic. The concepts of virtue. There are 12 books in Plato's Republic. Each one better than the next. No, better than the last, or whatever they'd say. No, not really. The beginning of the Republic's kind of dry. It's sort of a setting up of what he's about to tell you about the Republic, which, you get up to the allegory in book 7, and these things. And nonetheless, the idea for Plato is the unexamined life is not worth living. So you got to examine life to make sure you're living. You got to reflect on your life periodically, daily, hopefully, and if not moment to moment at times. Too much analytics screws up everything, so that's another side of it. But the idea is virtue. You have to examine life. Plato says, we know everything as children before we're born. He says we know everything in the womb that we're ever going to know in life before we're born. But birth is so traumatic, we forget it and spend the rest of our lives remembering it. And in the theory of forms, where he talks about parallelograms versus a triangle and these shapes, what's the difference? He's telling us we know things before we're even born. And this is a concept. Some of these ideas are archaic, like I say, but this is a very interesting concept. Now, so it's about remembering, about forgetting. For Plato is a huge part of this is remembering about forgetting. And then, of course, Aristotle's going to take it more to a natural science level later and say it's thinking about thinking is the essence. So that's one thing about the Greeks. They're always adapting it, changing it, 500 BC and on back up to 0, 400, 300, etc. And the reality is this. He says virtue is the core of our being. We strive for perfection, but we never reach it. But in striving for perfection, we get better and better and better along the way. As we go through life and get older as we go, we know reflection is very important. And when people get older, things change in life for many, most. And in book 2 of the Republic, I got to point this out. It's kind of a humorous little passage. The guys with Socrates are heading, these young guys, and Socrates is there, of course, watching them. They're heading to the Dionysian festival, which they'd go to every year, and sometimes they'd be there, for a week or two, and sometimes they'd be there for a couple of months because it was about wine and sex and, food. So the Dionysian festival was something the young people did to sort of blow it out back in the day, wine, sex, food, all of it, And they run into a couple older gentlemen, and one of them's name is Cephalus. And Cephalus is like, the young guys ask him, are you going to the Dionysian festival, Cephalus? And Cephalus is like 83 or 4 by then, maybe 87. He's old. He's in his 80s. And he says, are you kidding? He says, I would run from sex as if it was a mad dog. I'm like, wow. But nonetheless, Plato believed that men and women should be able to wrestle in the gym naked and not become aroused. I get the point. Yeah, I guess that's what happens in the military for sure nowadays, because men and women are there and you can't get aroused when you're wrestling naked. The crazy part is, what does that mean? Well, we should see each other as spiritual beings first. And what we are as people, not sexually. And this is almost an impossible tendency. It's kind of laughable, but I think the funniest part is Kephalus telling us that, he'd run from sex as if it was a mad dog. Oh, nonetheless, I brought that up to Dr. Taylor. He's Dean of Liberal Arts at Wright State now, and in class, and we laughed our brains out, about it. Just the thought of it. It's like, wow, he said, if everybody did what they want, we'd all be drinking wine and having sex. Nonetheless, Plato's Republic tells us that virtue is key and that we should treat each other spiritually, not even sexually, not even naked. It takes it down. Virtue is never perfected. Just like if you got 15 chairs in a room and somebody says, oh, my lazy boy is better, and somebody says this is better, and somebody says that's better. Well, there is no ideal chair, but every chair maker tries to make the ideal. It's the same with life and virtue. There is no ideal virtue, but we all try to do virtuous things, and we get better and better along the way. And because of it, we never reach perfect, but we get closer and closer to fine, closer to perfect, if you will. So what does it mean? Well, in the Republic, Plato brings it up. A few key points are the noble lie for children. In the Republic, he says that all children, it's debated if it's ages 7 or 12 or whatever, but he said all children over 7 is how I see it. All children over 7 will be taken out of the Republic as he designs it. And because it's a civilization based on his own, just like Sir Thomas More's Utopia. And it becomes it that the adults have to leave too, unless they can conform to the ideals of the Republic. And in the Republic, there will be guardians, which are the military. There will be senators. There will be those things that function in government and that. There will be teachers, of course, midwives of the soul. He tells us teachers, professors, and the midwives of the soul. I take this very seriously. This part is dead on. He also talks about the children 7 and under should be taught the ideals of virtue from the very beginning, and monotheism, one God ideal as the thought. And this is not popular at all, although he did it anyway in a large way in his life. And he supported monotheism. So one God. So the reality became then, well, if the parents could conform, they could stay. But if not, children over 7 and their parents had to leave. And Plato's going to start a new civilization. And within it, he says one of the key factors to children is education at the beginning on virtue and living a good life. But he said more than that, he said parents need to understand the usage of a noble lie to protect their children. And he talks about a noble lie being used. Your child asks you, where do babies come from? You give them an answer for now. And then later you'll have to update that as it goes. It's a noble lie. Now, he talks about it in life, though, and he also says that, just because some of us are being virtuous, some people are going to be unvirtuous and come along behind us and try to do nasty things. So this is a fact to remember, too. Aristotle warns us of that as well, especially with people who use speech and rhetoric, and writing rhetoric could be dangerous. But nonetheless, the idea of the noble lie works very well for children, but it doesn't work worth a damn on adults. Although I've noticed a number of women in my life over the years, and especially as I've gotten older, who do try to use the noble lie on men. And it's interesting what one person thinks the other doesn't want to know with respect to nobility in not telling. Guilt by omission is the same as lying. Could you do that with a child? No, I don't think you can do it with an adult either. Although people try all the time. I think, too, there's an assimilation problem between adults and children, i.e. adults who spend too much time with children, they don't think enough or something. I think they're too busy. I don't know. But I would never have a separatist attitude. I'm not going to separate children and their parents or anything like that, for God's sake. But Plato's ideals stand true. The idea is he really believed in pure virtue, that if we really pursue virtue for in and of itself, that we'll do better in life and that we'll be happier and have good lives. And I agree. I think most people strive for virtue every single day. But it's always good to remember from where these ideas came from, recorded history from 500 BC, That's been a long time ago. Concepts like virtue stand the test of time. It's like Billy Abner, a good friend of mine. Billy always says, I'm interested in capital T truths of life and very little else. I love you, Billy. See you soon, man. You guys take care. Have a good day. Peace, y'all.